Venom 2 had just the most insane post-credit scene. You know what's more insane than the post-credit scene in Venom? The fact that everybody's getting it wrong. Okay, so here's the thing. Here's what's actually going on here. This is nuts. A few things to know. One, the obligatory review of Venom 2. We laughed, we cried, had some cool fight scenes. Movie was awesome. Moving on. Number one, Patrick Mulligan's gonna become Toxin. Who's Toxin? Toxin is like the offspring of Carnage. In the same way that Eddie Brock gave birth, or Venom gave birth to Carnage, Carnage gives birth to Toxin. Toxin's more powerful than both Carnage and Venom. And in fact, in the comics, they had to team up to try to stop Toxin, and then Eddie Brock basically adopted him, and then Toxin bonded to a cop and became a good guy. End of story. The second thing, Venom proposes a mind meld with Eddie Brock, and Eddie's like, this is kind of cool. He wants to know the whole history of the symbiotes. What does Venom say? Your mind can't handle the 80 billion years of symbiote history across multiverses. Symbiotes are multiversal. Why does that matter? Because I don't know whether we'll actually see it or not, but it'd be awesome to see Null the Symbiote God. Who's Null the Symbiote God? Null the Symbiote God is basically the guy who created the symbiotes, right? They're basically living abyss. If you could take darkness and give it a physical form, that's symbiotes. Now, ultimately, Null fought the Celestials. He was basically defeated. He was imprisoned inside his own planet, which was encased by the symbiotes that he had created, which had basically turned against him in the process. And then they basically started traveling across the universe and even the multiverse, bonding themselves to different hosts, and different things happened. The reference to the multiverse by Venom is exceedingly important here. Why? Because as you guys know from the biggest part of the post-credit scene, Eddie Brock's sitting in his place, they kind of begin the mind meld, but it doesn't really actually start. Instead, there's a bright flash of light, everything changes, and Eddie Brock wakes up in a place that is similar to the hotel he was in before, but just small little differences here and there, along with basically a guy in his underwear brushing his teeth who's like, why the hell are you here? But on the TV is the news broadcast of J. Jonah Jameson. And this is where everybody's getting it wrong. Everybody is hypothesizing this idea that what happened with Eddie Brock is a result of the spell that was cast by Doctor Strange, right? That the spell was cast, things went wrong, and basically Eddie Brock has been yanked into the MCU. No, that is not happening. How do we know that's not the case? Because even if we take the most elemental aspects of this video, right? Look at this whole thing. You have J. Jonah Jameson making the broadcast that Tom Holland is Spider-Man. It's an exclusive and it's breaking news. Basically meaning it just happened. So what this means is this broadcast that we're seeing on TV happened within maybe an hour or two of the events of the end of Spider-Man Far From Home, when Tom Holland basically killed Mysterio, although I still say he's alive. And then the Daily Bugle broadcast that information out to the world because of the message that was sent to them by Mysterio. So if we look at this and we see everything that we're seeing in Spider-Man 3, that the timelines don't match up. Some amount of time had to have passed, maybe a couple days, maybe a couple weeks, whatever it is, but some period of time had passed between when Spider-Man's identity was made public to the world and when he went to go see Doctor Strange. There's points where he's in school, we see he's hanging out with MJ, so like, it's not as though like his identity was dumped to the world and then like 3 hours later, he's in the Sanctum Sanctorum. Doc, you gotta do something about this, man. So this broadcast happened almost immediately after Far From Home. Basically, if the spell hasn't been cast by Doctor Strange yet, then how could it be that Eddie was yanked into the MCU? The answer to that question, ladies and gentlemen, pow! Loki. Okay, one of the theories that we had when it came to this whole thing, the multiverse coming back in the Loki TV show, right? One of the things that we pointed out is that universes were crossing over with each other, right? You guys remember, we talked about that. We showed what it looked like when the multiverse was coming back, and you had universes growing, and then you had universes passing through them, so on and so forth. One of the things that we had talked about in Spider-Man 3, and possibly could have been the spell of Doctor Strange, or possibly even something else, maybe it's not that the spell went awry, maybe it's because of the events of Loki, is that the Marvel Cinematic Universe is just passing through other realities, right? It's the explanation we gave for how it is that you see Alfred Molina's Dr. Octopus, then you see like Jamie Foxx's Electro from some alternate reality, Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin, because they're passing through universes, and along the way, they're meeting these various people. Now again, whether that's actually true or not, I don't know, but this really seems to lend credence to it, right? That much like we saw with the end of Loki and the multiverse coming back and universes passing through each other, this seems to be a result of that Eddie Brock's universe, his Venomverse, is passing through the Marvel Cinematic Universe. How long he'll stay there, we don't know. We don't know if it'll be the equivalent of him like hopping off the train and staying in that universe, or if he just kind of keeps on passing through and that's that. Although, now that I think about it, the big question to ask here Will we see Tom Hardy's Venom in the future of the MCU? See, that's the question to ask. That I'm not even 100% sure about. I mean, it would be cool, right? It would be amazing. I mean, here's the thing. I feel like this is something that you don't walk back, right? Like Sony doesn't like throw Venom into the MCU in this way, and then we see everything unfold in Doctor Strange 2, and then everything goes back to normal. Like, I feel like we're experiencing a paradigm shift. If I'm being honest with you guys, and I've said this before, I feel like what's happening in Doctor Strange 2 is basically a consolidation of all the Marvel properties, whether they're owned by Marvel Studios and Disney or not, under the singular Marvel Cinematic Universe landscape or whatever it is. And it's not the first time we've seen that, right? Like, there have been stories, for example, after Dr. Octopus took over the body of Peter Parker, became Superior Spider-Man, and then Peter got his body back, Dr. Octopus created a clone body for himself, and then he was Spider-Man out in San Francisco. So it's entirely possible that you could basically see this whole landscape where, like, Eddie Brock is Venom, he's in the MCU as part of the MCU, but he just fights and does whatever he does out in San Francisco and stays there. And it's only every so often that you see him go to New York or something like that. But we know that, like, the new Avengers are coming. And if I'm being honest with you guys, I think Venom would be a great addition to the Marvel Cinematic Universe as part of the new Avengers, right? Like, you got Shang-Chi or Shang-Chi, whatever you want to call him, and then you got Venom. You'll probably have Tom Hardy Spider-Man, who will continue on in his role as Spider-Man as part of the new Avengers, and then whoever else they feel like bringing in as time goes on. But I feel like he'd be a fantastic addition to the team, if for no other reason than the comedic relief. And I know that Venom is not necessarily supposed to be a comedic character, but honestly, I love what Sony's done with him. I love the way that Venom's been created by Sony in their movies, so I kind of want to see that going. I really don't want to see that change, but I feel like he'd make a great addition. So that's my question to you guys. Would you guys want to see Venom on a new Avengers team in the Marvel Cinematic Universe? Or do you want to see Venom out there by himself, basically just doing his own thing, just kind of existing in isolation, away from everybody? You might see some stuff involving events going on in the greater MCU on like a TV screen when he's at a bar, or like when he passes by some store that sells TVs, if they even do that in San Francisco, and like you see something on the TV itself, right? So you know that stuff is still going on. But aside from like some crossover event, you don't really see Eddie Brock interacting with the rest of the MCU. Honestly, I think it'd be a waste if they did that. And again, I don't really see them going back on this. So let me know what you guys think down in the comments, because I'm really curious what your idea is about this. But this is huge, guys. This is very, very, very big. But I feel like no one's talking about this, right? Everyone's like, oh, well, it's gotta be a spell cast by Doctor Strange. It does not have to be tied in directly to the events of Spider-Man 3. Would it be cool if it was? Sure, but I think it'd be far more significant and far more notable if it's tied into the events of Loki, because what it means is Venom's involvement in the MCU is not limited to whatever Spider-Man happens to be doing. It's much, much bigger than that. So again, I'm excited, man. Like, this is, when I was in that theater, I jumped up, right? I stood up. Like Mariah will tell you, I was just like, what? And it took everything I could to not like lose my mind in this movie theater, just start freaking out. Like, oh my God, this post-credit scene is everything, dude. It was so cool. And that's one of the great things about this, man, is that if you look, like, in this post-credit scene, like, I was ready for one, right? I was like, okay, there's gotta be a post-credit scene here. And I was literally just analyzing everything I possibly could as fast as I possibly could, right? The symbiotes are multiversal. They exist across different universes. Here's the other thing too, right? Here's the other thing too, right? The symbiotes share a hive mind, right? This is gonna blow your mind. The symbiotes share a hive mind, right? Yes, that's one of the things that Venom established. The symbiotes share a hive mind. The hive mind expands across the multiverse 80 billion years of history. Sam Raimi's Spider-Man is still in continuity, and that includes Spider-Man 3, when Topher Grace got the Venom symbiote. So here's the question you have to ask, because Venom, Tom Hardy Venom, looked like it recognized Spider-Man, right? He looks at him, he's like, that guy, right? And he says it with a kind of voice like, I know that guy, right? He doesn't really say like, I know that guy, but he's like, I know that guy, right? That's what it seems like. And if that's the case and they share a hive mind, Spider-Man 3 is still in continuity, sad face, but it means that like the whole multiversal concept is intact, that the knowledge of the Venom symbiote as it was bonded to Topher Grace in Spider-Man 3, that information is shared with the entire hive mind, which includes the Venom symbiote as it's bonded to Eddie Brock. What does that mean? they're aware of each other. You don't have to go through the whole thing of like, hey, I'm Venom and now let's do a great big huge thing where we meet and it goes on for half an hour and all that kind of stuff. No. It's one of these things where like Tom Hardy meets Tom Holland and the Venom symbiote just fills him in like that. Like, oh yeah, this guy's Spider-Man, he can do some stuff. He's a good guy, he's cool. Don't worry about him, he's on our side. Done and done, right? They go forward as teammates. You don't need a 15-minute exposition explaining who Spider-Man is to Eddie Brock. Venom fills that in for him, right? So this is cool, man. This is huge. This is colossal. It's absolutely massive. The most exciting thing to happen to the Marvel Cinematic Universe really in a long time, if I'm being honest with you guys, right? Sony's universes crossing over with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Man, what a time to be alive. With that being said, guys, we're gonna bring this to an end. Thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you all later. Peace.